I'll just take a minute to apprise all of you of Alchemy, an annual case study challenge for young professionals in the public relations field. Alchemy aims to recognize and celebrate the new generation of creative talent and voices from around the country and deepen professional support to help advance and amplify young talent. The participants will be given a situational challenge to develop an effective PR program. A jury of leading marketing and corporate communication experts will judge the entries on various pre-identified parameters. The last date to receive confirmation for participation is June 10th, and you can find more details on bit.ly/RT Alchemy in all uppercase. The challenge is open to a team of 2 below 30 years of age. There is no entry fee. The top 3 winners will get an opportunity to be felicitated at Praxis in Chennai, and the front rankers will also be invited for an all-expense-paid trip to an international Provoke conference. This initiative is supported by PR Pandit. This brings me to the next session topic, which is how are independent PR firms future-proofing themselves? May I please have on stage speakers for this session, Abhinav Srivastava, CEO, Madison PR, Hemant Batra, founder and MD, Veritas Reputation PR, Radhika Nihalani, founder and CEO, Thinking Communications, Rahul Mehta, CEO, Media Mantra, and Shailesh Goyal, founder, Simulations PR. Priyanca Vaishnav, co-founder and partner, Content Conspiracy, will be moderating this session.
Thanks so much, Radhika. Good afternoon, everyone. Moderating a panel with people who run PR firms, it is very difficult not to be tempted before the session to give them your elevator pitch. As a content and design firm that, well, by providence, got all of our first business, and we are 5 years now, from PR firms that included my own alma mater, Madison PR, and I call it alma mater because 10 years ago, that was a learning curve for me. And eventually, a lot of PR agencies that put us in touch with businesses who saw merit in content alone. Of course, it helped that within a year, the pandemic hit us and we did roaring business. But most importantly, I think it's important to understand that the term independent PR agencies is a lot about being bestowed with, being endowed with a lot of autonomy, And it's not just going wild out there, but there's a lot of responsibility involved. And so that kind of change, that kind of transformation that a lot of independent, and I still have a problem with that term, independent PR agencies is both interesting to see and to observe that it is constantly in motion. And therefore, I'm going to start with a first bit of couple of lines from all our panelists about understanding. And, I think even though the pandemic is now officially been declared by the WHO as done and dusted, I think we all learned a lot from it. And so I think the first question that I would like to put forth to all of you would be how the landscape changed, whether the changes were already beginning to spark and then the pandemic, the situation kind of fueled it or what. But yes, a pre-pandemic and post or pre-pandemic and now, what were the kind of changes that we saw as independent firms and not just independent PR firms, independent businesses, I would say, Who would like to take it up first?
I'll take.
Yes, please, sir.
So, PR industry was forced to adopt digital during the pandemic. Just to give you an example, the live case, in 2020 March, we were actually planning a press conference for a bank in Kolkata. And everyone was ready to go, fly down. And suddenly the pandemic came, or everything closed, shut down. So we did that press conference virtually in July. Now, in that July virtual press conference, not only the Calcutta media came in, the Delhi media came, the Chennai media came, Bombay media came. So we had a tool in place earlier. Nobody was using it. So everyone was forced to adopt a better tool which already existed earlier. So that was a major change. And post-pandemic, of course, I mean, the numbers are growing. The GDP, my colleague, my friend Sudhi said, the GDP to growth ratios. So that is happening, that is kicked in. Things are going, especially in our sector, BFSI FinTech, the things are looking up. That has taken us to the next thing, that there is a talent crunch. So we are looking at different ways to adopt newer technologies and do the things, which can make the talent crunch okay. So that is a learning over the pandemic.
That's an interesting observation coming especially from an industry that contributes practically to the entire country's economy. Anyone else? Yes, please.
So as my friend rightly said, it started, but the digital transformation had already started. Pandemic only expedited it, actually. Of course, much was happening at the media, and the entire print and publishing industry had gone into digital, and it started. So the pandemic gave the PR agency who were laggards or who were yet to adopt the processes. They had no choice but to adopt in the process, actually. And thanks to the pandemic, this entire process happened very soon, actually, sooner than it happened, actually. But now, after that, it has taken a big leap, actually. Now you see, as one of my friends was saying earlier, कि हम रात को बैठ के fax करते थे, वो करते थे. Now nobody talks about it. In a fraction of a minute, your all press releases are gone, or your communications are out of the industry. But it has gone much more beyond that, actually. Not only in the media communications, which is, of course, one of the large part of any agency. In all the connectivity, in all the networking platforms, in all the public connect initiatives, what you offer to a public relation firm, the pandemic has given you a chance to explore them, actually. And this is how it has expedited the entire process, actually. Over to you.
Yeah, I think personally, I feel that the pandemic was a boon for the PR industry, because it made us experiment with a lot of new technologies. It made us kind of see new solutions for our clients. I also feel that the pandemic made corporates realize that, how important communications and PR is to them. I think the brands which stayed invested in PR during the pandemic, they reaped the benefits. And now these brands are actually willing to invest more in integrated campaigns. They're willing to release more budgets. I think from an industry perspective, the pandemic has made us evolve as an industry, has made PR and communications go up the value chain in corporates. And also, I think the second thing it's done is showcased a way for the convergence of digital and PR. I think that's something that was always a boundary which had to be transgressed, which has happened now. And I think all clients now are looking at integrated solutions from our agencies. And increasingly we see that they want to deal with one firm and not multiple firms.
I'd like to add a layer of this question for Abhinav especially, because I've known Madison PR so closely. Sorry, this panel is already colored. But before I come to Radhika, what I want to also understand is Madison, as I knew it, was extremely FMCG driven. And brands like that need an element of live, face-to-face. Lots of interaction. This room into a few,
Fair.
Did you see that transformation as well?
So I would say if you look at pandemic point of view and overall PR and Madison also, I think the sectors have opened up. Very frankly, in the overall course of action, however you look at it, sectors have opened up. People have started to look at influencer marketing, discussion. So like what you're talking about, Madison, with regards to FMCG or in the consumer segment, if you look at, influencers play a very big role. Now, whether it is micro-influencers or looking at celebrities also, those are also influencers. So looking at from that perspective, I would say even during the pandemic, people have started to realize that value. And that's what I think the boundaries have changed. So while Madison will have different verticals to probably look at different companies to probably look at specific, that boundaries also changed. So in PR domain, I think as far as my view goes in terms of what pandemic has changed, I think the sectors have changed. Policies have opened up. There was healthcare or FMCG companies who were not looking at certain sections not to be talked about. And it was always a guarding rule. Celebrities will do this, celebrities will not do that, or probably influencer will not do this. Or in the healthcare, this can be talked, that this can be spoken, this cannot be. I think that boundary has eased off. That boundaries have changed.
Interesting that you say that, because Radhika, I'm going to add yet another layer for you, since you run an entertainment PR firm specifically. In the past 3 or 4 years, I remember being in Delhi in 2017-18, and there was this whole breed of influencers who were mostly Instagram or TikTok or YouTube influencers who were riding that digital wave and making their presence felt. But during the past 3 odd years, we've seen a change in the perception of influencers as celebrities. I'd like to know more about how you've seen that change from a nuanced perspective.
See, definitely, with the pandemic, as you mentioned also, influencers have taken a huge center stage. Also, what has happened in the last 2 years with the lockdown, at least in the entertainment field, we were bombarded with the number of celebrities, right? Because the whole lines were blurred between who's a theatrical celebrity and who's a digital celebrity and who's a celebrity just born out of a social media platform. So that lines are today blurred. Your biggest actor is doing a OTT film, right? So in the last 2 years, the influx of the number of people in the entertainment space has grown like multifold, and that has been huge. And from an entertainment PR agency, and I'm sure it applies across the board as well, one change that we've seen, because people are consuming news socially so much. So for PR people, and especially in entertainment, like it's become an even more 24/7 job that it already was, right? Because you have to keep your ear to the ground every waking minute of the day, because stuff is changing and you need to react as quickly as possible today, as opposed to a couple of years ago where these things were still kind of picking up, but it got accelerated in the last 2 years.
I'm going to add half a layer here, where you talked about reacting to a development. One thing that future-proofs anybody at an individual level or at an organizational level is to be preemptive or therefore proactive. So then I'm also trying to figure how PR firms are planning or have put plans in motion to therefore future-proof themselves. And I don't know. I think, Sir Shailesh, sir, I'd like you to take the picture.
So it was already, we could see in the coming events cast their shadow before, as they call. So we added a lot of different divisions besides PR. We added events division, we added digital division 5-6 years back. And also more on content side, also content development, content advisory. So adaptability is one thing which I would say that is very important, and keeping abreast of the trends and preparing team and ourselves also. So that is one area where we think we can future-proof ourselves. Number two, realigning the offerings what we have actually. So today what we offer is not the plain vanilla offering actually. It's always related with the social, related with the public connect initiatives and much more than that. So at no point of time client should feel that I have not got the delivery which was expected. So it's always given in terms of 3 to 5 things which we have to say that. And going forward, we see the technology-led the discipline will grow actually. So there's always a small army which is getting ready to take over and train the people who are probably not so savvy, like we have been talking about artificial intelligence, chat GPT and all. So they will come. They are bound to come. But the relationship, the ethical part of it, the value part of it, the emotional part of it will never go out of fashion. Yeah.
Right said. You spoke about setting up an army, as it were. But Hemant, I want to ask you, in the area of finance, as a large industry, I think if there's one thing that makes a financial PR person, professional, convincing enough to even be given the job is their own immersion in the industry. And as a content person, I see a lot of younger people just not reading. Yeah, I see nods there. Yeah. And I'm not even talking about bedside reading or whatever, but hey, a report needs to be read. And there are various versions of a policy that will present themselves in various reports. Coverage, and I'm talking about long-form reports as well. If you are reading 3 pieces of key coverage that mention the same report, it should ideally compel you to at least look through the highlights. I'm also wondering if there are plans in motion to kind of lock people in rooms and make them read reports front to back. But yes, I want to know where that is going.
The person has to be self-motivated. So the teams are self-motivated that, the reading. So we have a process that when you come in, you check the news. When you go out, you check what is happening on that regulator website. Something is IRDA has announced at 6 o'clock. The person who is handling insurance should know. So that those things, some policies we put in place that works. But overall, we focus more on objective-driven communication. So it's not that you have to ask yourself not what you can do for the client, but what is required for that particular objective. So if our capability is X, but the client requires 2X, can we scale up and do that work for that client? Scale up that objectives, or scale up the capabilities. And if we inculcate that thinking in the organization, never say die attitude, automatically all these things will be put in place.
Yeah, that makes sense. More.
If I may add, I'm just saying that, in the entertainment space, especially when people come in, they feel like it's so easy and it's so nice and it's glamorous and, we get to go to Maldives with the actor and, we are going on these great award functions. But it's so different from what happens at the back end of it. But like he said, if you create a culture in the company So honestly, no one wants to sit and read a 40-page report. It's boring. Let's just face it and let's be honest, right? But if you create a culture that kind of makes this kind of research-oriented things exciting and fun, especially in an agency life, which is already so hectic, already the pressures are high, already stuff is, you are not really the master of your time, but your client is. If you make that if you create interesting, fun processes to do that, then it's something that you're inculcating, right? It's like putting a habit in your kid to read. If you drill it down that you have to read this, it's not going to happen. If you create, like I said, a fun environment or a fun reason. So just to like how you were mentioning some processes that you have, like we have a process called the Knowledge Hour, where we once a month come together, pre-work hours, because after 9 o'clock all hell breaks loose every single day, where we just sit and go through interesting campaigns that not us but other people have done in the business. So it compels team, you put them in teams of 3 or 4 to go through what other people have done. So do some reading, do some research nationally, internationally. So like I said, if you create a culture that encourages it, then your chances of it to make it happen are higher.
Right said. I think I'm a product of that forced reading habit that never came until I was forced to read and I was pursuing my MA in English. And then I ended up spending hours in the library because suddenly I realized there was something out there that I liked reading, and it turned out to be annual reports.
Such is life.
You bet, But, that also brings me to wonder. I mean, I think I'm a product of a lot of independent firms, whether in PR, whether in investor communications, whether in production. So I'm also wondering, how are independent firms versus multinational firms more capable to offer a competitive advantage? And Abhinav, I want you to take this first, and then I want you to go next.
Okay, I think independent firms are more, so pros and cons on both sides. I have worked for a multinational firm too, and I'm right now working with independent firm as well. So if I have to look at from both sides, so obviously the pros is from an independent firm that you are more agile, you are much more in control to probably take on the conversation in much better way, change the gears, look at what's required for the client, and how to probably work around. So, say example, if I am going across to a client, I would not say no to anything. I'll say, okay, if this is not there, then we'll bring it. We'll take it on. So how to probably work that out? There are enough and more ways to probably work that out. And then you have got a luxury of maybe making the change internally. Obviously with the guardrails, so like I'm working for a firm which is bigger, though still independent in that sense, but there is guardrail still. So, however, in MNCs, that pro is not there, but there are still huge amount of already invested process and systems, or probably there will be capabilities in-house, maybe in India, maybe outside, and you can take advantage. So now, that's a, I would say, but as an individual, you might not know that capability might still rest somewhere in other country. Now, that's a disadvantage. Now, cons could be in terms of, I would say, from an overall perspective, independent firms, I don't think so. There is cons, but commercially, it becomes a little bit more viable, not viable, whether to take on something, whether not to take on something. Because the client is looking at maybe a 10 lakh investment in an event, which they will pay later, which maybe an independent firm or a smaller firm might not take it on. But MNC will say, okay, next day, no worries, please go ahead. So I think those are certain bits, but more, I would say more financially, it could be
it's a cash flows game.
That's exactly. I would say in terms of MNC versus independent firm, it's only cash flow discussion, which is maybe a con. Beyond that, everything is a plus.
Interesting. When we were discussing the panel, you had something very interesting to say, and I want you to elaborate on that.
Okay, I think, so I have worked 18 plus years in international firms and maybe 5 years in, domestic firms. I think the pros of working with an independent firm, one, of course, like he said, is the, agility and the nimbleness and the flexibility is much faster. In international firms, you have to go through set processes. I also feel the financial viability and flexibility is much lesser in international firms. I have struggled in international firms to get approvals on certain codes which I felt were more realistic for the Indian market, but they were being controlled from Hong Kong, and they made us lose that pitch. So I think from that perspective, independent firms offer that flexibility. I think we also have the flexibility to take quick decisions on hiring. In international firms, even on hiring, you have to go sometimes and take international approvals, which gives you maybe a competitive disadvantage on that front. I think training-wise and all that, international firms are slightly better. There's more planned organization structure. You can reach out to, international practice heads, do a lot more, cross-learning with people in other countries and, adapt those best practices. But I think I've had a great experience with independent firms. I think independent firms have a very bright future in India. And you just have to invest in the right people, the right, competitive advantage against international firms. I think the advantages we have as independent firms actually will give us a better advantage to grow than international firms will in the coming future.
You know, one of the things that we talked about back then was that younger people are rising to positions of, I wouldn't say authority, but definitely decision-making faster. You know?
So I think that is very true. So that's something I've observed over the last, since the pandemic, is that a lot of corporate leaders, including my juniors, are now, heading practices in big corporates, including even corporate affairs. And I think their way of looking at communications and PR is very different from, say, the senior corporate leaders of the past. So I think being independent firms, we are able to adapt much faster to their needs, because I think it's the Gen Z people who are also coming into the Corpcom arena, and they look at measurement, innovation, integrated approach, much more in a much more different way than maybe the traditional PR heads did earlier. So I think from that perspective as well, independent firms offer that competitive advantage.
While we did talk about the financial sector, I think in general I also want a comment from you all in terms of measuring relevance. That's something that came up during our discussion, and with independent firms, because decisions are happening almost at the speed of light. I want to also understand how relevance is measured or should be measured or can be measured for at the firm level, at an individual level. How do you keep yourself agile like that? Radhika, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. So you're saying more from an internal relevance, or you're saying relevance to?
I think both. Unless you're staying, your individuals are staying relevant to the course, I don't think a firm can stay relevant to the industry.
No, what I mean is that, measurement in terms of what we are offering to the client, which is always such a great...
For sure. Also a report card that you give yourself year on year, How have we fared against our own...
I'll tell you how, at least how we work, and I don't know if that's... everyone would have their own ways, which again becomes an advantage of an independent firm, because there are no set processes to follow and you can create them for yourselves, is that we, for ourselves as an agency and for each client that we work with, we, at the start, create success metrics in accordance with the client that we are partnering with right at the beginning. Like, what are our short-term success metrics and what are our long-term success metrics? So that's the way we operate when it comes to clients. And like I said, internally also. So we do, so we try to be at Thinking and Think Talkies inclusive in that sense that we do a goal setting which is not, also, an advantage of independent firms is it's not very hierarchy driven. I feel that independent firms have more fluidity when it comes to structure. So we come together to set goals for ourselves. That what are our goals for 2023? Some are tangible, some are not tangible. And then at the end of the year, you reflect and you see how you have fared on them.
So then, yes, Abhinav, you have something to say.
No, so I think I would say, what I have lived by till now, and I think in this room, whoever is there, I think they have also lived by that rule. It's back of our mind, which is, I think, what works is, are you watching out for your client? Yeah. Okay, and if somebody as an individual level or at a firm level, if that is what comes a little bit in sense, I think the part of developing those new kids, or probably getting the habit to read, or probably looking at new technologies to adopt, or probably going across and understanding the client distress, is, I think, from a client perspective, it's always, I don't think so anything else matters. Engagement comes with that client only if the client understands that, oh, you are looking out for me. That's it.
A lot like just human interaction.
Absolutely.
Right?
Are you looking out for my company? Yeah. Are you looking out for me in terms of working out? Is it something wrong? Are you able to tell me, or I'm able to get it from somebody else? Are you preparing me for the next level? Are you not? So I think that's what I have lived with. And I think all of us over here must be living it as a
I think Hemant put it very succinctly earlier of being objective driven You know,
I think he's right, actually. Proactiveness is much more in independent firms, and the engagement of founder and CEO with the CEO clients level is very, very high, actually. And that's why they like it also, and probably the delivery level also goes up accordingly.
No, I also feel that the international firms enjoy one big advantage, and is that when there are large global pitches and there's a mandate globally for them to go with one global firm. I think if that weren't the case, in a lot of cases, the Indian Corpcom leaders here in India actually would prefer to go with independent firms because they also like the flexibility of working with a firm which is very nimble and which can take quick decisions and is also more cost competitive. I think it's all a matter of talent. You know, I worked in international firms, now I'm working with the independent firm. So if you have the requisite talent set in your company, I think, and are able to deliver results to the clients, I don't think they would care two hoots about whether it was an international firm or an Indian firm.
Yeah. That brings me to the last two questions of this little session. It's weird how 45 minutes just start going tick, tick, tick like a time bomb. But quick thoughts on what has worked for your specific PR firm. Let's call it secret sauce. Let's start from my right side.
Okay. So I think for us, you know, while we have always been a very aggressive growth-focused firm and we have been growing 65% to 50% year on year. Of course, depending, you know, increase your billings, the percentage goes down. But I think we have consistently focused on getting good talent on board, on diversifying and being, you know, adaptive to market needs. So, you know, very recently we realized that a lot of our clients were asking for integrated campaigns. So we set up a specialist in-house team, including video production, including, you know, content, which we already have. And we, you know, put in the right talent there, which was ex-journalists. So that is one facet. Two is that we always never compromise on profitability. And, you know, I know it sounds like a negative thing, but it really helped us wade through the pandemic. So we were one of the agencies which had zero salary cuts. We could easily afford to pay the salaries during that time because we did not compromise on margins. And I think in the pandemic as well, because we adapted, so we grew our business. We did not lose business during that time. So I think going forward, what we are doing is, like we talked about in the earlier panel, generalists versus specialists. So we will be a generalist firm, but we are building micro specialties in the team. And I think that is being done through hiring the right talent of the right expertise. So there will be a healthcare specialist, there will be a tech specialist. And these people might come from PR or might come from corporates, but we will be building those competencies and we will be offering a one-stop solution to our clients because people are asking for that. There have been many cases in the recent past, there have been RFPs only for PR. And, you know, when I talked to the client, I said, can we give you this also as a solution and this also as a solution? They're absolutely open and they give you that RFP additionally as well. So I think that is something we're going to do as a growth.
So PR plus.
Yes.
Shailesh.
So precisely that is what we also have done, actually. Always surprise the client, exceed the expectations, delivery plus, actually. So going beyond the mandate, I mean, of course, we are compromised on profitability for that sense, actually, because it requires investments too. But we have chosen to do that, actually, because that reduces actually my marketing expenses because it creates your ambassadors and they in turn become your salespeople, actually. So delivery plus is what we have seen as one of the most important secret sauce for us.
Interesting. Radhika.
So for us, what we have focused on, of course, is getting the right talent. Like I said, it also does seem like, and I do believe there was a session on recruitment and the burning question of finding the right PR people, which everyone is like facing, and it could seem like it's easier to recruit in the entertainment PR space because it is a slightly glamorous life. But I always say there are two kinds of people. Either you can be intimidated by entertainment or you can embrace entertainment. So we have to find people who really embrace entertainment because then once you do, it's addictive and you cannot do something else. That's what I wish to believe. However, I feel for us, what we have really focused on is service. See, in entertainment, it's easy to have media relations. If you have a Shah Rukh Khan's press conference, it does not require my great skills to get a room full of media. 100 media will show up, whoever sends out that invite, right? But how have I? Because when you're doing a Shah Rukh Khan press conference, and he's not my client, I'm just using his name, just saying, that your pressure points through the course of that planning of that press conference are so intense. So how do you handhold and service your client that well? Like he said, that your client feels that you're not an agency, you are his extended team, and you have his back. So the minute we are able to make our clients feel that, that is what we have really focused on, like really, really good service, exceptional service, and that being the factor that they then stick on to us.
I want to go to Abhinav first, and Hemant, I want your last word on this.
Okay, so I think I will second Radhika. The only thing is the word is different. So we look at more so the secret sauce is more of a client delight. And I think as being Madison, I think what we are secretly inducing as a process is that we able to manage quite a lot of different activities by different units. So giving much more broader thought process, still at a cost which is required. But I think influencer discussion, which I started as a conversation, is our secret ingredient apart from secret sauce. So which is what is being introduced not only in FMCG or consumer. I think the influencer conversation is pretty much valid in finance or healthcare or in any vertical you put it, like in terms of infrastructure and manufacturing too in current scenario. So I think we are able to build the client portfolio from that perspective too, is what I think is our secret sauce.
Hemant, I want your last word on this.
So all of us have come up with the same rigor in this room. So we all know that we can't be everything to everyone or every sector. So, but we can be everything for one sector to begin with. So that's our secret sauce. We started with being everything to one sector, being a specialized team. Have people from the industry, have colleagues from the communication side, and have a robust team which serves one particular sector. Now, having done that, we can always replicate this. That's what we have done. We have gone on to the next sector and the third sector. So that is a secret sauce. I mean, once we have a first team which is better than the best in the country, then same formula can be applied to other sectors.
Very interestingly said. Two people on this panel mentioned talent. One said good talent, one said right talent. And I'm going to pose my last statement to this panel, which is for aligning individuals to organizational goals, and with independent firms, that sometimes becomes a bigger challenge simply because there is a faster churn, right? We all talked about in the talent panel, we all talked about how some people are just prepared. Okay, this person will go after 2 years. But I also know of firms that have retained key people for over 10 years. Some of them I'm friends with. And I want to then know, how do you align individuals to organizational goals? And I want to start with Madison here.
Okay, I think in my view, currently, again, in terms of the talent part of it, so good talent is something which we are still aiming for. Right talent with regards to vis-a-vis of the industry and the sector which you're working is something which is what we are working with right now. Very frankly, I think in terms of what has happened in the talent part of it from a Madison perspective specifically, is something that there's something more has been given, aligning to the goal of individual with the firm's goal. I think the little more has been given every time, and that's what has made that talent stay along. That's one. Beyond that, I think it's obviously a personal drive in terms of how you are working with the firm which is aligned to somebody, and then you see somebody as an inspiration. That's the second part of it. The third is, I think, from a overall other aspect, which is in terms of currently with the crunch which is going on in the industry, I think still that formula of aligning the goal with the firm's vision and the talent, I think that's what we need to still inculcate. I think that daring, that gumption which is required, that I can take on more and there is something which I can probably be able to take on in that organization, is something which is what if we can probably showcase in some way or the other as an industry, individually as a companies. I think that's what will make the difference for them. Because Gen Z is currently, they have got their own ways to work around. They have got their own chat GPTs and tech to understand, but they still need to understand the firm's tech and tech firm's chat GPT too. So that's what it is, I would say.
Interesting. Hemant, what would you say? How do you align your kids to this behemoth?
So having a great internal culture will hold these kids back. I mean, so they will, having a great culture makes them committed for the organization. So that is something, which has to be developed, and over a period of time, that has to be done. So that one thing is extremely important. Second is the training. I mean, the training part for the talent. I mean, a lot of people, they come, the thought process, what they have learned in the colleges, and that is what the things it is going to be. I mean, we have found a lot of gaps from even the MBS, while interviewing the MBS. I mean, what they have been taught. Because people who go and teach in the colleges, they are not practitioners. They come from educational background. So when they come and when they learn on the job, that kind of internal culture makes them stick.
Interesting. Radhika.
So yeah, I echo these thoughts. I also feel, like I said, to me, I think culture is very important. It's not really, the writings that you hang on the wall. It's not like having a Starbucks kind of cool-looking office. It's just every single day, what are the things that you're doing? And I feel like, how you need to make the clients feel that you have their back. You need to make your teams feel that the company has their back. I think that's very important. That's when they start to feel a sense of belonging to the company. And yes, you will make them feel like that. And there will be many who will move on also. And you will not be emotional about it. But that's the culture that you create. Also a culture that is okay with failure. Because it's going to happen. We don't talk about failure as much, and we are defining success metrics for ourselves, and all of us are doing that. So we also try to create, because it's okay, because we all have, and we all will. For them to feel like it's my own, I have the ability, or in the sense I have the liberty to make a call, and if I make a mistake, my company has my back. And I feel that's the kind of culture we are trying to create. Of course, it's foolish behavior if you keep on repeatedly going and making mistakes.
So both responsible as well as empathetic autonomy is something that you're alluding to. So we have setting up role models. We're talking about taking a step back and getting kids trained by practitioners. We're talking about making failure okay and establishing a culture. Shailesh sir, and then you. I want to...
So ownership with the freedom is what we have actually practiced all the time. We nurture them for about 2 years on the cross-sectional clients. You'll support this team also, you'll support infrastructure team also, you'll support healthcare team also. So once they are ready, which we feel, we give them freedom to choose. And also the authority and the ownership that this client is yours. Anything, we call it management by exception. If a call comes to me, something is wrong actually. If it is not, it's being managed by you. There's a weekly review, there are monthly reviews, but the freedom brings a lot of confidence into them, and also it brings the, I would say, loyalty or faith in
that sense of ownership is something,
yes.
yeah.
So they are attached, if they are 2 years, 3 years, 4 years student, they are attached to the account directors or managers, but beyond that, at every stage they feel that this is my client and I'm running the show actually.
So I think the industry has evolved, and during my time when I started my career, it was a culture of monologue. It was a top-down approach. The leadership would say what was their vision, and then you kind of followed that vision pretty blindly. I think today's Gen Z needs a lot more collaboration. So it's a transition from a monologue to a dialogue situation, and you need to get your team involved in the whole growth process. You need to share your vision with them, but also take their feedback on how can that vision be achieved, so they feel part of that growth journey. I also feel that, while we can get external specialists to train, but senior people in the team, in our own agencies, have a plethora of experience across sectors. I think it's somewhere down the line, the onus also lies on the leadership and the senior people in the team to take that time out to train people, to make them realize where they're going wrong without making them feel bad. So I think one thing I was taught growing up was that always praise in public and criticize in private. I think some of the companies do not follow that, and that really becomes a demotivating factor for a lot of people. I think if you want to retain people, you have to, like he said, admit, even if they make faults, you still have to give them that leeway. You have to train them where they went wrong in a private situation, not in a public situation, and let them improve and make them feel that you're a part of the growth journey. Also have to keep on taking their feedback in terms of where they want to go in their career. We've had parallel shifts, people coming from digital teams and asking them to be moved to content or to business development, and we give them that flexibility. So I think from that perspective, it has to be a very participative process for them to feel that they belong to the organization.
Great thoughts there. Interesting how we very quickly moved from not just how things changed and just how forward-looking independent firms, PR firms are today. I think in my personal capacity as a very, very small and niche agency, we've actually tried to put together a form for anyone who shows even a glimmer of interest in working with us. It's called a values form, and it purely tries to gauge whether on the values platform, independently if we align. And I think a lot of questions in that form also inform people who are interested to work with us in whether they value and we value the same things. There's that, and also you talked about mentorship, tapping into senior talent. And I think tapping into our vulnerabilities, our blind spots, I think those are things that have really set us up for whatever's to come. Having said that, I think we're almost there. Quick questions? Yes, sir, in the black jacket.
So the question is that future-proofing is a lot about risk mitigation. Do you have a risk mitigation plan in place for your business? And if yes, what are the top 3 risks that you feel are there for your agency? And I would like to have both founders and CEOs' views on this.
Sir.
So as I told about ourselves, we have added a lot of divisions actually. So that itself is a future-proofing actually. There cannot be a situation where all the 5 divisions will be out of fashion or out of, and overnight there'll be technology changes like how Paytm gained after the notebandi. Aisa nahi hone wala. So maybe there will be 2 at the low, 3 may go up, and it will give you enough time also to ready yourself for what is next and what is new actually. Yeah.
I think for me, the risk mitigation would be the fact that it's a mix of, like I said, being very nimble in terms of adapting to the market trends. So if we're seeing a strong need for integrated, then we have quickly scaled up our digital and content and design capabilities for our clients. 2 is retaining talent. I think because you invest so much time in training talent, if you lose them to another agency, that's such a lot of time waste from your side as well. Even though, so I think that is number 2, and I think number 3 is constant investment in technology and training.
I'm afraid we have. May I have permission for one more question? Yes, sir, in the blue shirt.
Thank you. So in this future-proofing, you spoke about customer enablement. You also speak about the team members and how we are going to do it. One question that I had is that today, or rather in the future, you're going to have more digital natives that you're talking to, right? And we've not spoken about consumption of media. And I wanted to get your thoughts. How are you future-proofing yourself in terms of who's consuming, your customer's customer? Or what are we doing? Because one is many new media and new platforms. Second is very low attention spans. So creativity is going to be a big part of our business. But over to you.
I want to add one more layer to that question, which is we feel that we know something about being at least digital immigrants, if not natives, but we're dealing with 2 days ago, I was expressing my grief about having an intern who didn't know what tabs and address bars were. But hey, that's how user-friendly technology has become, that they don't need to know that. And I think with that layer, I want you all to answer that question.
I think from my perspective, digital natives, the best people to talk to them are digital natives. So, we have hired a set of young people, who are themselves digital natives, who consume that media, and I think in some cases, it's not always that the senior leadership is the expert. Sometimes these young people and, the Gen Z of today have to be empowered to, do those innovative campaigns. So in our case, like I and the leadership team would give them a lot of innovative ideas and strategic campaigns, but the tactical execution of that from a digital native perspective of what they will consume, how can we best portray to them in terms of how can we repurpose that content, how can we do some crazy videos on that which they will relate to, what platforms to use, we leave that to the digital natives to decide. I think that really, because these are the people who consume that, who can relate to that audience much better. So.
Thanks so much, Rahul. Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Or if I can add a bit of it. Okay?
Please.
So maybe a very, very maverick thought, but while the agencies are future-proofing by themselves by either building their own talent pool or building their own verticals or looking at technically getting digital and technical involvement fully. But I think is the client also future-proofed? And is the client looking for that? Because the problem is right now, client wants it X, Y, Z plus digital, but goes back to hit on your knuckles with PR. So the point is over here, while the future proofing can be done very effectively from an agency side, and that's where the Gen Zs are making the difference. Fair point. That's why I said, we have to look at their chat GPT and their algorithm, but also they have to align with the algorithm of the chat GPT of the client as well as the agency they're working for. Because that's what is the future proofing, is my view.
Interesting thoughts from Rahul, Shailesh sir.
So allow me to add into that. That's why we go to some universities also, and we spend a lot of time with interns also, because they are bringing a lot of fresh thinking. Actually, when we go to meetings with the client, we take a junior also along with it, because he can sometimes align with the client thought process, or somebody who's sitting with the client as their manager or brand manager or somebody. And in the process, we also take a lot of learning actually. So if 10 things I'm teaching them, probably 20 things.
Learning can come from anywhere. I think that's true future proofing.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Schools and colleges give you a lot of thinking of consumption.
Thank you so much, Rahul, Shailesh, Radhika, Hemant, and Abhinav. I think this was truly amazing to talk to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.